The cursed land lies deep in a dense, colorless forest. Hidden within this land is an ancient city, once known to the forest folk as the Holy Land. Buried in the depths of the city, a warning was discovered long after the rulers have fallen. The idol, taken from the ancient land, led the kingdom down a path of destruction. The idol must be returned.
Hey, buddy. Doing good? You seem a bit... I don't know. Mind if I walk? If I walk by you? You're not gonna, like, instantly kill me, are you?
You've probably played at least one Souls-like if you clicked on this video. Maybe you've played the most recent ones, maybe you're an old head and played Dark Souls 1 back in the day. Have you played the original? The most hardcore of hardcore Souls games? The legendary and infamous Demon. You probably haven't. That's not like a dig at you, being like, oh, you're a noob if you haven't played my subsection of video games. It's statistical. Both forms of Demon's Souls can only be accessed on either a console so old that finding one is getting more difficult by the second, or a console that is so outrageously expensive that no one has it. I played the remaster a while back, and very legally played the original and didn't pirate it. It's rough around the edges, yes, but beneath the muck is really interesting design choices and the beginning of what would become Elden Ring. You see, FromSoftware's game design philosophy is very unique in the sense that they're completely content making the same game a bunch of different times that have very slight alterations to try and achieve a better final product. They've been doing this for the better part of 17 years, or 33 years if you count Kingsfield, which I do. Speaking of, to truly understand Demon's Souls, its development, and how it relates to future choices for the series, we must look at the progenitor of the progenitor. The Kingsfield series.
Oh my god, you're dead.
I am not Ian, I am Anthony.
Which Game Grump are you? I hope you're not JonTron.
4 main games would be made in this series, ranging from the PlayStation 1 to the PlayStation 2. Let's start with the beginning of the beginning, Kingsfield 1. Kingsfield, named after a golf course that one of the lead developers saw in England, was originally only released in Japan in 1994, produced by Naotoshi Zin, the former president of FromSoft. Despite being named after an English building, it never got officially released outside of Japan. A fan translation made in 2006 is the only way English audiences can quote-unquote enjoy this game. It was almost never made, as at the time it was being released, no PC could actually run it. But with the PS1 being released, FromSoft finally had an excuse to create and release it as their first ever game, which only took around 6 months. The game itself is set in the magical land of Verdite, or if you're wrong, Verdite, where you play the role of Jean-Alfred Forrester, who, hearing word his father and his entire platoon of men went missing within an old king's underground tomb, went in to try and see what happened to his father. Very interesting story that, after reading, brings quite a bit more appreciation to the series, for me at least. Before writing this, I was convinced that Kingsfield was a game released by an established game studio that was churning out games on the regular, not an experiment done by a handful of people in a company that mainly created productivity software. Kingsfield would steadily release games through the PS1 and PS2 eras, steadily getting better and less terrible as they went on. Some of the cutscenes look actually beautiful, and through the rendering engine, you begin to see FromSoftware's signature dark color palette peeking through. This is where they really started to play with the dark fantasy idea, which is a core concept that would persist through all of their future games. But enough about the history, world building, and the interesting people who made this game series and all future works by FromSoft. What about the gameplay? The game definitely plays. It's about what you expect from PS1 game. Very clunky tank controls, it looks bad, and the gameplay is economical to say the least. It's almost charming in how bad it is, like you want to be confused at it, angry even, but you can't, because you know the era that it was released in. It's like yelling at an 1880s snake oil salesman because he can't do calculus. It's not even a concept yet, so expecting it to be this great thing is foolish. This game series established what FromSoft would continue with into Demon's Souls, a health bar, stamina bar, mana bar, attacking, etc. However, no dodge roll exists just yet. The health bar and mana bar work about how you would expect. When you take damage or cast a spell, they go down, and eat herb or mana potion to bring it back. However, the stamina is really interesting to me. The amount of stamina you have changes the amount of damage you deal. The fuller the bar, the more damage your strikes do. This is why combat feels so bad, because it really incentivizes you to slowly walk up, attack at full power, and then walk away to let your stamina recharge, then walk back up. This gets a little bit more interesting in the later games, since they added a run button, more spells, more interesting weapons, etc. But throughout it still felt odd and clunky. This would be remedied in their next one-off game, Demon's Souls. The unique online co-op mechanics were inspired by an encounter director Miyazaki had. On his way to work one morning, it was snowing heavily, and cars were getting stuck up a hill. Miyazaki and several others helped by pushing any stuck cars up and over, until eventually, it was Miyazaki's car to go over. Miyazaki wanted to thank everyone who had helped, but there were more cars to push over. He didn't want to hold up the line. Miyazaki stated this experience stuck with him, which was the direct inspiration for how co-op work, where random strangers would help, then vanish to seemingly never be seen again. Demon's Souls is the first Souls-like game ever created, and the first game that Hidetaka Miyazaki directed. And now Toshizin continued to be part of development, acting as a supervisor. The team is now much larger than the original Kingsfield crew, and their game is not named after a golf course. This is also the first game that FromSoft and Bandai Namco would team up to spread this one to PAL audiences. Besides their exclusive game with Sony, FromSoft would continue to choose Bandai as a publisher for North American audiences. In it, you are a being only known as the Chosen Undead in the land of Boletaria. You have chosen, or been chosen, to kill King Alant and gain power through Demon's Souls. This game would establish a lot of what would become staples of in the future games. Dodge rolls, armor, poise, a progenitor bonfire, and an annoying fanbase. A lot of what makes Dark Souls what it is. But one-use healing and mana regenerating items persisted from Kingsfield, along with its general dark fantasy vibe. Now, unlike Kingsfield, you aren't a named character. This now has a character creator, so a greater sense of personality is injected into your playthrough, but you sense a loss of connection to the greater world. So they used a lot of what they learned creating Kingsfield to judge what should happen in this new medium they're interested in. A much more three-dimensional game, mechanically and literally. Of course, they had to abandon a lot of what Kingsfield had. Most obvious is the first-person perspective and tank controls. Demon's Souls' movement feels a lot more fluid than Kingsfield. It feels like this is what they really wanted to get right in this one. So they devoted a lot of time to creating a good feeling and strong base that wouldn't really get all too much updating in games to come. It was that good. I know it sounds like I'm going crazy over what seems like basic concepts in gaming, but at the time that Demon's Souls was released, no other game besides maybe like Shadow of the Colossus was making characters that move like this. And they got it right. They got it really right. Skyrim would trip on its shoelaces a few years later and make terrible movement. Dragon Age Origins is point and click, so it doesn't count. Medieval moves, Deadman's Quest used the fucking PlayStation Move. No one did it like FromSoft. This movement system is what people mean by Souls-like. The way your movement interacts with your weapons, character, and what they're wearing. The fluidity your character feels when beginning any action, and the fact that these states of moving and attacking are not analog concepts, but they can coexist. Movement changes how your attacks work. However, most other things besides this were unrefined in my eyes. It's pretty hard not to notice if you have played any other Souls-like game. The leveling is steep, the armor is situational. FromSoft really wanted you to feel like you were wearing a 33-pound suit of armor. When wearing something over your equipment load, you get a new exaggerated heavy walking animation, and your rolls become terrible. This isn't all too separated from future titles. However, the bar for what the game considers as over your equip load was greatly shortened. In every future game, going over 70% of your equip load made you fat roll, with worse and worse tiers as you put on more and more stuff. In Demon's Souls, it's 50%, a way more punishing cutoff. This makes putting on armor more committal than in other Souls games. Armor was your build. You're not running around or rolling you have heavy as sin clothing. This gives the game a different vibe. Since you can't roll if you have any armor on at all, your only way to avoid taking damage is walking and running. Because of this, it kind of feels like a Mario boss. You don't really have to know too much about each boss, simply their gimmick or main weakness. Despite this, it didn't dissuade the community from calling it one of the hardest games of 2009, such as user Edelweiss on the Demon's Souls side of the Neoseeker forums, who says,
"Who does From Software think they are, making a game super impossible? I know that From Software is a goddamn dickhead to make a game that cannot be completed. When the game is impossible, there are no endings. The ending was taken out of the US version, and all gameplays cannot be completed as a result of the impossible virus installed. Demon's Souls should go straight into the trash. No one should ever play that motherfucking game again. People should flush this impossible game in the toilet, and From Software must pay for their crimes. It is illegal to make Demon's Souls impossible to play. Japan also cannot complete it either. No one can."
Lol. Hold on. Lol. Dude, I have the US edition. I've played through the ending 12 times, both bad and good. It goes straight to New Game Plus after the credits. Please don't make up virus rumors just because the False King made you his bitch. That's just ignorant.
Super impossible, eh? I must be a gaming god since I beat it twice. I think Aru's on his 4th playthrough. What does that make him? Edit. Lol, make that 12th.
Are you sure we are playing the same game?
This thread seems like a dedication to how bad Edelweiss sucks. Flaming aside, please don't try and pass bad info about some imaginary virus. If you need help, just about everyone is more than willing to help with any questions you have. And some will actually help you in-game if you ask. But not me. Not after that post.
You all can suck shit. Demon's Souls is a toilet game. No one can complete this game. If you think this is a good game, you're only following the wrong path. This game is as bad as Akitoshi Kawazu's RPGs are. The Last Remnant sucks 100%, Saga series also sucks 100%. From Software also sucks 100% due to lousy development skills with their RPGs and Armored Core. They all suck 100%. I decided not to check that game out. Demon Shits is an Atlas failed attempt at making proper business. I can disagree and criticize all I want to. In America, we have the freedom of speech, the right to disagree and talk shit about anything.
Good for you, but that is weird that the only person who can't beat this game just happened to be only you. Not you found that weird. Move on, nothing to see and hear.
Lol. Or you can let the hot air pass through your lips all you want. That start actually made my day better. I mean, I've been killed on this game too, but you have topped the chart. Have you even been to 1-4? Do you even own Demon's Souls? I'm sorry, bro, but you have once again given me reason to believe that children should not play games rated above E for everyone. Round of applause. If you decide that you really want to play, PSN, A to you. I'll make a new character to help you.
Leon Topodium nivale, commonly called Edelweiss, is a mountain flower belonging to the daisy or sunflower family Asteraceae. The plant prefers rocky limestone places at about 1,800 to 3,400 meters altitude. and it is a non-toxic plant. Its leaves and flowers are coated with dense hairs, which appear to protect it from the cold, aridity, and ultraviolet radiation. The Sloven name is Plonica, meaning mountain girl. In Romanian, it is known as Flower de Colt, which means cliff flower. The flower is referred to as Stella alpina in the Italian-speaking Alps, as Étoile des Alpes in French Alps, meaning Star of the Alps. Well, Mr. Cliff Flower, my email is laculuswwwe@gmail.com. Please contact me. This was also a new addition from when it was made. From our perspective, this game is pretty tame, but we are looking backward from our future. Elden Ring has evolved from Demon Souls gradually through the years, slowly making this game style better, harder, and more fair. So by playing these games first, then going backwards is obviously going to make it seem easier. We've been battle-hardened by Soul Level 1, Consort Ramadan no-hit fights, no-hit marathon runs, and Rick's Soldier of God. So, to people back in 09, any boss that didn't follow the rule of threes was super hard, even if they still follow these easy-to-read patterns and gimmicks. It was an entirely new game style that FromSoft was pioneering, so these games are going to be seen as incredibly difficult. Maybe not to the level that Edelweiss was complaining, but people saw this game as brutal, the hardest they have ever seen. There is an art to making a good enemy and the environment around it. It is something that I feel goes underappreciated in our modern gaming landscape. These developers could have thrown a handful of enemies in random areas to pose as threats in the game with little to no care, or they could carefully plan the environment in conjunction with the placement and type of enemy. As an example, when placing an enemy dangerously close to a cliff, great consideration is needed to not make it too easy for the player and the enemy to go tumbling off, due to the player's actions or the enemy's. However, the cliff should not be written off entirely. If a player plays their cards wrong and ends up with their back to the cliff, falling is a worthwhile and fair punishment for putting yourself in that scenario. On the other side of the coin, a player that knows how the game works and interacts with its environment in a knowledgeable and smart way can use that cliff as, instead of an obstacle, a tool to effectively kill enemies placed there. Demon's Souls has this exact scenario and does all of this wrong. The player and the enemy fall off these cliffs way too easily due to the small strip of land the player is given and the bombardment from flying and grounded enemies. Grounded enemies themselves have a rolling attack, which they seemingly have zero control over, and most often go tumbling off the cliff to their deaths. While a player can use this as a tool, it is way too easy to achieve, removing any satisfaction or knowledge from the encounter. This is only one of the many faults with Demon's Souls enemy placement I have. While some are interesting, most feel like they're placed without much thought at all. This particular aspect would be an area that FromSoft would fix in later titles. Enemies feel telegraphed, makes sense why they would be there, and interact with their environment. Demon's Souls feels less difficult but surmountable and more hardness for hardness' sake. Through this, the difficulty of this game comes from its environment, not the bosses, which is peculiar as a format in these games. When I played, I found it not that hard, challenging, but definitely not as hard as Dark Souls 1 and nothing compared to any DLC boss. Demon's Souls is an interesting case study of the Souls format before FromSoft really got its footing. Still having some residual DNA from Kingsfield, but still very much its own thing. If you enjoy the history of games and how we got where we are in this art form, I would consider picking it up. It's very easy to emulate, and even if you're not comfortable with that, the remake is still a relatively faithful translation to newer hardware. But I will say it's not exactly an enjoyable experience. I was constantly asking myself while playing, why don't I just go play Dark Souls? Because, taking a step back, Dark Souls is just a better Demon's Souls. Of course you are entitled to your own opinion. I know this has a cult following behind it, and I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it the whole time. There's some really good bosses and environments in here. To name a few, I really liked Old Hero, Maneater, and of course the False King. These are all good bosses along with the environment around them. It just wasn't a slam dunk all of, or even most of the time, like future games. Along with this, there's something to be said about FromSoft reusing some areas and bosses from this game, but that is more getting into a critique about Demon's Souls and FromSoft's business model that is really interesting,
but something I want to save for a future video. And, that about wraps up what I want to say. I didn't really make this video to bring home a central point. I just really like Kingsfield and Demons of Souls. Not as their games necessarily, but the history, development, and people behind them. Thank you for watching. This is my last video made using Premiere Pro. I'm switching to DaVinci right after this, so if you see a difference in the future, that's probably why. Special thanks to all the people who voiced in the Edelweiss bit. You know who you are. And a list of all the music I used will be in the description. If I miss any, don't be afraid to comment and ask.